Okay, folks, welcome to Feel the Force. Today we have Tim Wilde. He is an expert in all things Atlantean, having to do with Atlantis. He is an ascension and light body expert. He's been working closely with the evolvement of Earth for most of his life. He was a high priest in the eras of Atlantis and ancient Egypt, and is using his collective memories to bring through the spiritual gifts and information stored in those times. His current work with ancient Atlantean technologies is already helping those on a spiritual path around the world. And Tim is also an author of several books, which I will post in the links below. And also you can go over to his Facebook group or page, Practical Ascension, and he has many meditations there, which are very good. Everything will be in the link below. So we shall bring Tim in. Just bear with me. Thank you. Okay, here we are. We have Tim Wilde here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jesse. Thank you for inviting me on, mate.
Very, very excited. So to begin with, a rather heavy subject, the rise and fall of Atlantis. How did it get there and what happened?
Oh, it's a big one, basically. Yeah. I mean, the more I've been I've always known about Atlantis in the spiritual field since I've kind of been on my pathway since the mid to late 90s. But Atlantis never came onto my radar really until Diana Cooper wrote the book about it in 2003, but Discover Atlantis. This isn't a plug because I mean she's had the book out for years, but if anybody who's listening to this wants to know what I would consider to be as accurate as a detail of memories of what the place was like, then read the book. There's a lot of channeled text out there, but that's the one that caught my attention. That's the one that resonates with me, and I remember it being like that. There's a lot of good things in there, but over the years, since I've been immersed in it and it's become part of my mission, it's actually basically, you build a house, the first thing you do is you structure a foundation for the house, you dig the hole, you fill with concrete. Well, Atlantis is the concrete. So it's everything that I've been doing has been built on that subject. And there's a very good reason for it, because everything that's going on around us in the world at the moment, even down to all of the turbulence that we see, is due. It has an Atlantean theme. It has a blueprint. It has a factor. I'll explain that as we're going along. But just to really simplify the subject, Atlantis was it was a 260,000 year period. I mean, a fair old whack of time, pretty much as long as we could say that humans have been around on the planet, really, in any kind of form. So 260,000 years ago, a group of souls called the Intergalactic Council, who oversee everything that we're doing on this planet, particularly the current ascension process, decided to set up an experiment in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean called Atlantis. And so the first Atlantean experiment was started. Okay, it took 10,000 years to set up. It took 10,000 years from the point of origin to call all of the souls in, set the whole thing up. And it kind of the way my head describes it, it's a little bit like kind of Bear Grylls getting dumped on a lump of rock with like some tools and some goodies to get on with, and it's like, right, create a civilization. So all of these souls kind of evolved into it, and with the way that we understand time and space and everything, we can't really kind of put an indicator on how long 260,000 years is, but it's quite a long period of time. Yeah. And in that time, Atlantis rose and fell, or began and failed 5 times in total. So there was experiment 1, experiment 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th and the final one. Okay. Now the 5th and the final aspect of the Atlantean experiment only finished 10,000 years ago. Okay, Atlantis sank, according to all of the common pool of information, 10,000 years ago, which ain't it's not that far down the historical timeline, really. And that kind of sent this huge shockwave around the world, even the parts of the world that weren't involved in it. What made it so different is the fact that it was called an experiment and set up as an experiment. It was kept completely separate from the rest of the planet. There's many of the descriptions would describe the Atlantean continent as a domed civilization. There was no one that got in and there's no one got out. They had the Atlantis underneath this roof under very structured and very kind of finely controlled circumstances. And so, you know, why do that for 260,000 years? What's the point of dumping a civilization on rocks or various rocks, which changed in format over the 260,000 years? Why do it? And the answer lies in the 5th and the final experiment. Okay, the 5th one. It's almost like the first 4 times they got it wrong. Okay, they had too much, or they had too little, or they abused their power. And there's lots of different people that have incarnated over the first 4 experiments have either got very good or very bad memories about it. And each time it went down with all the fireworks and the nuclear explosions and the tidal waves and all the rest of it. So about, I'd probably say 15,000 years ago, or get between 12 and 15,000 years ago, the Atlanteans got it right. They hit the nail on the head. And what they actually did was live for 1,500 years at a 5th dimensional frequency. They got that spiritual pitch just right. So they are physical like us, but had very advanced technology, incredibly connected to their crystals, incredibly connected to the land, to each other, to everything like that. And they hit that vibration, they hit that pitch. And when they did that, they managed to sustain it for 1,500 years. Now that's a long time. And I really think that it was the most incredible achievement, because, I mean, you and I know how difficult it is to maintain your vibration, even nowadays when we've got the energy helping us. But they did this back in the depths of 3D, when the planet was like vibing like a stone sort of thing. They did it. And during that 1,500 years, they created a blueprint. And they basically stored away all of their sacred information, their knowledge, how they lived, how they communicated with each other, how they communicated with the crystals, with the land, with the animals, everything, education, what politics looked like back in those days under a 5D civilization. And they documented it all. They stored it in the crystals. They stored it in the halls of Amenti. They stored it in places around the planet that are of high sacred value that we still haven't accessed yet. When Atlantis fell, it became inaccessible. Okay, and it became inaccessible because people would have abused that like they did at the fall. And only now are we beginning to retrieve that information again. In fact, the retrieval started in 2013. And that blueprint was created for us. It was created for us moving into the era that we're moving into now, which is why the whole thing just ties in with each other so very nicely. We're rolling out this planetary change that looks like a controlled demolition at the moment. In actual fact, on the other side of it, it's going to look very different. So that is why Atlantis was, and that's big long period of time experimenting with all manner of different spiritual living. But ultimately what they were trying to achieve was an ascension vibration in a physical body. That is, it's like the peak of the spiritual achievements, and they did it. And it's now rolling out for us to absorb and to live as further down the line, 10, 11,000 years further down the line.
Wow. And do you think we'll be capable of picking up that sort of technology?
I believe we're well on the way to doing it. I think the thing about it the fine balancing act that we've got going on at the moment is, obviously, when Atlantis fell for the fifth and the final time, it was a catastrophe. Nobody wanted it to happen. Everybody knew it was going to happen. It had to happen, but nobody wanted it to. So we, as Atlanteans, those of us that were there, and most of us were, fought tooth and claw to make sure that it didn't happen. It was an unnecessary destruction. We didn't see why it had to occur.
So
and
who did it, or what did
it? It was this is where things get interesting. It's like a soap opera. There was a group of souls, okay, that made decisions, very much like a high frequency government. Not if you imagine that, it seems like a long way off. But priests and priestesses and magi and groups of souls that basically kind of ruled the roost, but in a high frequency way. They made sure everything stayed at a right frequency. They made sure things didn't get knocked out of kilter. They were using sci-fi level technology by this point, and it was imperative that didn't get out to the rest of the planet, because it's still evolving at like caveman level sort of thing at that phase. So it's all very controlled. And all of a sudden things went south at the end. One person apparently made the decision to use what was available for selfish needs. And at that point, the crack opened, the dark came in, everybody kind of just like, right, okay, I can't sustain this any longer, and began to behave in a manner which we are still seeing in society today at the moment. It's almost like at that point, when Atlantis went from 3D to 5D, which it did very quickly before it sank, the people that were in charge of Atlantis, the people that kind of took over in that frequency and vibration, have reincarnated again and again over the last 10,000 years. And they are the ones who are in power on the planet at the moment, causing all the aggravation. It all sounds like it's very fanciful, but if you think about it and you think about the way these people operate, what they're actually into and what their vibe is, it's for want of a better word, it's pretty manky. It's dank stuff. And it's been rolling around in the back of our societies for the last 10,000 years, but it's just been kept very well hidden.
Sure. I've had this theory that there was some kind of archonic reptilian invasion of some sort, but I don't know if that's true.
It was. It wasn't so much of an invasion. It was, we worked with them anyway.
Yeah.
We worked with different societies. We've worked with the archangels. We worked with the dragons and the unicorns. We also worked with the extraterrestrials on many different levels. Ones that were tangibly visible to us, like the ones that you've just mentioned, the ones that weren't, because they were working at a much higher frequency. And so the reptilians, or the Anunnaki, were they were working alongside us for quite a long period of time. We relied on their technology. We got the emotional bodies and they've got the technology. It was quite a good marriage at the time, and that's the way that they here on this planet. They're going through the same ascension process as us, but they got different lessons on that ascension pathway. They've got rubbish emotional bodies. They can't compute. It's a bit like Spock, but in a lizard body sort of thing. It's just like they don't know what the consequences of their actions are. So they're learning that. That's what's happened on that particular pathway. But they were very useful at the fall, because they got a lot of us out of there, when in actual fact we'd have sunk.
Yeah. And that is fascinating, the sort of origin story of the whole thing. Because I've been fascinated by Atlantis since I was a little kid. It was always on my mind, and I must have had a past life or something. I don't know.
You would have definitely been there. The second it's got your attention in any way, shape, or form, the second you feel that connection to it. I mean, in some way or another, if you think about it, as incarnating humans over the last 260,000 years, to have not gone there would have been pretty strange. To at least one incarnation in Atlantis over the last 260,000 years before it fell. What would have been the point, unless you fancied foraging berries and living in a cage? Because that's pretty much what the rest of planet Earth had to offer at the time. It was a spiritual experience, and there was a lot to be learnt in that very short space of time that they were kind of, especially at 1,500 years, if you were there during that period, which I suspect that you were, and most of the other people out there working in this field were part of that. So it's the memories are there for a reason.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so with that 5D and above kind of frequency, that quite literally creates a sort of heaven on earth. And do you think we're returning to that frequency now?
I think we're moving there very quickly.
Yeah.
I think we're the thing about the transition that we're going through at the moment is like we're making a big jump in vibration in a very short space of time. Okay, we've agreed to make this shift. We're currently slap bang in the middle of what is known as the 4D window. I mean, I kind of wince a little bit when people kind of talk about 3D, 4D, 5D, because it does tend to put it in a box, and that can be quite off-putting for people. You know, a lot of the time it's better explained like you are shifting vibration. It doesn't matter about numbers. You are going from a small, tiny pokey house to a big mansion kind of place. And in the middle, you've got to move. You've got to ditch all the stuff that you don't want. You've got to leave it behind, basically. You can only take with you what will look right and feel right and vibrate in this new place. So here we are, slap bang in the middle of this transition. The whole planet's going through it. It's chaos. It's absolute chaos.
Yeah.
I got the lot that were in charge of at the end of Atlantis desperately clinging on for power. I mean, they are getting desperate at the moment. I mean, it's like a comedy. It's like a comedy show out there. It really is.
It is. Yeah. And yeah, I sometimes look into it, have a peek, and it's just like, you can't take it seriously. It's just unbelievable.
No.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, last year I dipped in and out of it. Every time I dip into it, it tends to knock me off my perch a little bit, and I immediately start getting sucked into I mean, I'm a parent at the end of the day. I've got 4 children. 2 of them are adults and 2 of them are younger. But when this all first started happening about a year ago, it rattled my cage, because I was thinking, okay, it's beginning. It's starting. How are we going to traverse this? Are we going to be in trouble, or are we going to be able to control this and navigate it properly? You don't know what's coming, do you? And it was all a bit of a surprise. We pushed for change for years and years and years. We want change. We want to live on a different planet, kind of thing. And all of a sudden, we got change. And it's, I don't like that. You know what I mean? It's not being presented in a comfortable format. So it's a bit of a funny one, really. So yeah, we have got a period of chaos going on. It's been predicted for a very long time by lots of different people in lots of different books and lots of different prophecies. And the other side of it, it's shining bright as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, I'd be down the pub. There wouldn't be any point, would there?
Yeah, true. So there seems to be this, as you said, 4D window, and like what I'm saying is it could go in the direction of dystopia or in the direction of utopia. And will we see another kind of fall of humanity, or will humanity finally get the message and like rise together as a harmonious collective?
The way that I see it is there are 2 options, okay? And these are 2 very different fields of energy. Now, if you look at it from the point of view that we got 7.8 billion people living on this planet, okay, that's a lot of people. Okay, it's like, you know, I know we roll big numbers around on a day-to-day basis, but that's a lot of souls. In 2008, Archangel Michael came to me and he said, "It's time." This was the day that my mission really started. That's when all the Atlantean stuff kicked off. He just kind of dropped into a meditation I was having in my bedroom at the time. Just turned up, gave me some extremely high frequency Atlantean stuff back, which he said I couldn't use publicly until after 2012. And he also said that there were going to be 6 billion souls moving through the Ascension Gateway. Okay, so at the other end of it, by the end of technically 2032, when we have established this 5D planet that we're moving into, 6 billion souls will be on the other side of it. Now that, to me, kind of it ran a red flag straight away, because that leaves 1.7 billion people.
Yeah.
So what you got to look at is soul choice. Who wants to ascend? Who's agreed on a soul level to ascend, and who has chosen to continue to learn and live at 3D. Now, it all depends on your soul age. It all depends on your level of experience. Have you experienced 3D enough? Or do you want to go and get a bit more of it? Do you know what I mean? So it's the choices are there on a soul level. People who are experiencing what they're experiencing, they're doing it because they need to continue learning. But it doesn't mean, at the moment, the two realities are kind of merged with each other. They're separating, but they're still, it's almost like we are living in that reality. They are living in our reality. We're watching their TV and they're watching our TV. And it's all very jumbled. It's very muddled. But at the moment, what I'm seeing very clearly, that these two realities are separating. And at the other end of it, there will be the 3D school that continues with all of the 3D things that they've invited in and they've agreed to. And it's going to be the one that we've worked very hard to create. And they will happen on different timelines and different frequencies. That's kind of how it's been explained to me. And I think it was Diana Cooper put me on the spot the other night. She said, explain to me exactly how this is going to work, because you sound like you know how it's going to work. And I thought, hang on a second, how are we going to do this? How's it actually going to figure out? And so we've basically got over the next, if you think about it, this all began on 2012, 21st of December 2012, and it's predicted to finish in 2032. So you've got a 20-year window. During that 20-year window, we're going to see approximately the migration, maybe less, of 1.7 billion people. But if you think about the natural transition rates during 20 years, it's going to be, it's what I see as kind of a bit of a natural flow, a natural process. And at the same time, people have got the right to change their minds. They're like, no, I don't want to learn at that level. I want to ascend. So this is what makes our job so much more interesting, because we're getting as many people as we can to jump on the ship with us as we go through it. It's all happening.
So you're saying there's going to be the vast majority of humanity is going to go through the Ascension Gateway, and
I believe so.
And then a minority will stay behind it.
It is a minority. Is the more I'm looking at it at the moment, despite what we are seeing out there and the reflective level of consciousness, the only thing that's stopping people moving through the Ascension Gateway or actually waking up at the moment is a serious dose of cognitive dissonance. And never underestimate the power of cognitive dissonance and how difficult it is to chip it away from the third eye when you're working on a daily basis. So this is why it looks like a lot of people are just not getting it. They just ain't getting it because they don't want to get it at the moment. The reality of it is too frightening. It's but eventually people are popping awake. It's like popcorn, but cooking at a different heats. It's like, oh, I'm awake. Oh God, I don't like this. You know what I mean? It's a funny old process. It really is.
And from what I've been sensing, I could be wrong, but I feel that there's like an active campaign to prevent people from ascending into 5D, which is why we're seeing what we're seeing on the planet now.
They are doing absolutely everything they can to stop this happening. Absolutely.
So how do they know? How do they know it's happening? Do they know consciously or unconsciously? Right.
It's conscious. You know, it's conscious manipulation. These people come from spiritual stock. They were working for the light originally. You know, if you look at it a little bit like if you made a movie, all right, you'd have a set, and you'd have actors, and you'd have a script, and you'd have people playing goodies, and you have people playing baddies, and you pull them aside and you say, right, you're a baddie. You're going to have to act like this for 10, 20,000 years or whatever. So go away and be a baddie kind of thing. And the rest of them, and so it's actors who've taken roles. And a lot of the time it's been going on for so long because Earth is geared up like it is that they've forgotten that they're acting. And they're still clinging on to it. It's like, no, you cannot win sort of thing. But if you think about the lunacy, or just simply the level of consciousness that it would take to make you think that you have the ability to stop an ascension process in the first place, it puts it all in perspective a little bit. This is a cosmic ascension process. It's not something that we're just doing in a club somewhere in a country. It's an entire planetary movement that affects the other planets as well. The energy that's coming in is so high and so powerful. It's just tidal waving everything out of its way. So they're going to cling on for as long as they possibly can, and it is clinging on. You can see the desperation in it at the moment. It's just, it's if you got to kind of take it with a bit of a pinch of salt at the moment. But they're causing as much trouble as they possibly can. There's no doubt.
When my energy is low, it does trigger me as well.
Me too. Me too. You know, I'm never going to.
Guys, come on, just let go. It's over. You've lost.
Come on, give us the keys back. You've had a nice
exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Give me my planet back.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great preamble, you could say. I wanted to talk a bit about Thoth, because did you mention that you were Thoth, or you are a reincarnation of
I believe a more descriptive term would be soul aspect. I mean, if you look, every time you incarnate as a soul personality. You come down from the oversoul. This lifetime, I'm Tim Wilde, okay, and I got very lost in the Atlantean thing to start off with, and I think a lot of other people do. Who was I in a past life? It can be very alluring, and you got one foot in that, you got 1 foot in that era, you got 1 foot in that era, this era, and you get very ungrounded with it. The thing to do is kind of bring through the aspects that are available and manifest them. But for the essential part of this incarnation, I am who I am now. But according to quite a few different sources of information, that was the incarnation I had in Atlantean times, and obviously kind of many in between, and in different bodies in different places around in the world doing different jobs. But it's always had this kind of theme. It's always been of service, doing this kind of job. You know, a Templar back in the good old days in the Middle Ages, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Was he one of the founders, or
yeah, he's one of the original souls that went to set up Atlantis, then disappeared for kind of experiment 2, 3, and 4, and then came back for number 5. Okay. So I don't really kind of have any recollection on the soul level about the middle part of it. It was just such a huge length of time that I think it's more easier to be evolved on an etheric level, assisting from the outside. But I remember the 5th one very clearly. It was it's quite close. 10,000 years isn't that long ago, really.
Yes, and he's always depicted with a pen. So was he like the original writer?
Scribe.
Yeah.
Scribe. I mean, back in those days, Thoth was working in the Temple of Wisdom, which was basically where Atlantis as a community, as a continent, basically, under a dome, would have learned a lot by communicating with each other, with working with the land. Anything that was coming in from the cosmos would get documented, it would get stored, it would get written about, and most of all, it would have been stored into the crystals at the time. So it was the Temple of Wisdom was very important because it's where everybody kind of squirreled away all of their really important information.
That reminds me of a lot of modern day kind of more 3D secret societies where they have the hidden knowledge.
Yeah,
and they say, well, it's a society with secrets because we don't want that knowledge to get out to the masses who might abuse it or misuse it. Yeah. So it's not necessarily sinister reasons. It's more,
well, you know, what are they going to do with it if they get hold of it, which is very understandable, really, because a lot of people have been working at a very low level for quite a long time. So I can understand that mentality, but whether their information is high frequency or not, or whether it's there simply because it's regarded as elite information, is two very different matters altogether, really.
Yeah. And Thoth is, correct me if I'm wrong, associated with Hermes as well.
Hermes, yeah, Hermes the messenger. That was a Greek incarnation.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, wow. It was sunny and hot. I think we all like going where it was sunny and hot as long as possible. There was South America, and there was Greece. Greece was one that I feel very, very connected to, but mostly Egypt, ancient Egypt, because after Atlantis fell 10,000 years ago, we all split up. We all went off in different directions. We didn't all kind of migrate to the space. Some of us went to South America. Other people went to Tibet. Some people went to the UK. But quite a collected majority went to Egypt and re-established it there. And that's why a lot of the really ancient Egyptian culture reflected Atlantean culture, because we tried to move what we had there, despite the fact that the vibration had dropped, and continue it. And it's like, hence the pyramids and the connections to the cosmos and everything. But of course, the energy was devolving so rapidly that it couldn't be maintained, and even Egypt turned into a very third-dimensional society quite rapidly.
Yeah.
So,
yes, and the whole sort of master-slave system began there, which is now playing out in
globally
in another aspect.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's everywhere in society, but a lot of people don't even realize that they're in a state of slavery, because they're being kind of like, they're going and doing their thing every single day. And it's that whole realization now that's been taken, the majority of that's been taken away. It's waking a lot of people up.
Yeah. But I sense that structure, that system is now like crumbling. There's
it is.
not going to be any slavery anymore, because the energy won't support that kind of dynamic,
No, it won't. It's what we are potentially rolling out, what we're moving into, is very level. It's very linear. It is so totally different from what we've experienced, but it's not, because I remember I picked up on what you said earlier on about, like, kind of, could we possibly slip into this kind of like, autocratic dystopian future kind of thing, where we're all kind of like, microchipped, and like Bill Gates has got his remote control kind of thing. And it's, it's like, he's got the kit, he's desperate to do it sort of thing. But there's the way the information that I've been given is that if we were existing on this planet in a third dimensional frequency, yes, that would be an option. That would be something that we could potentially experience. But we've gone through a vibrational gateway that has utterly changed the matrix format on this world now. And we have experienced as a society again and again the complete destruction of our civilizations. The only way to redo a civilization in 3D was to just basically either burn it to the ground, flood it, freeze it, blow it up, do whatever you want to it kind of thing, and then start again kind of scrabbling around in the ashes. That's kind of thing that's been installed into our DNA. We're very frightened of it. It's why a lot of us are kind of up in arms about what's happening at the moment, because it's natural. The alarm bells are ringing. Oh my God, it's going to happen again. Haven't we done this enough, sort of thing? Yeah. But in actual fact, what the vision that I've been given, and was given to me quite a while ago, was as smooth as it can possibly, a transmission from one society to another. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bits that work. We're going to take the bits that are fair, that are high frequency, the ones that operate for people, and we're going to move. We're going to have that in 5D. It's not going to be looking like some holiday destination that's unrecognizable. It's still going to be our world, but it's not going to be taking from people. It's not going to be taking from the planet. It's not going to be unfair or brutal or full of division like we have been used to. Yeah. And this will happen. It will have a natural pace of evolvement, where, all of a sudden the things that no longer work will just simply disappear, and they will be replaced by things that do work. At the moment, we're in the demolition, all of the things that are being taken away that don't work.
Yes.
The aspects that just simply are not resonating in that frequency.
Absolutely.
They can't go there. So they have to be alchemized out of reality. It's interesting to see the way it's operating. We all knew it was going to happen, but we didn't know quite how it was going to happen, or how fast it was going to roll out. And it happened quickly, didn't it?
Yes.
beginning of last year, boff, off we go, you know.
Yeah. What do you know about, I don't know if they had, did they have currency back in
Yeah,
Atlantis?
they had currency with a lot of the time, because it was a very self-sustaining civilization. Currency, as in the currency that we know, wasn't quite so necessary. So it would be like labor for labor, skill for skill, yeah, or goods for goods kind of thing. It was. I don't think, you know. I think the bank aspect of it came later on. Currencies in.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, there's no harm in swapping crystals. I can imagine there was quite a lot of crystal exchanges going on in those days as well. It was a massive part of Atlantean society. So there would have been all manner of exchanges between people, and there would have been a currency system, but probably not as we recognize it at the moment.
So there's more connection and more like favors and like, oh, I know you, I know what you do, and you know me, you know what I do, and then we'll do this for each other because we're living in a harmonious society. So
yeah, and I'm seeing so much more of this already developing in what we're doing. You know, people are already saying, you know, like the instinct or the desire to move away from the rat race is installed within all of us anyway. We're all feeling it. However, actually removing yourself from the rat race when the rat race is actually saying, right, go on, go away and be away with you, sort of like, you unclean lot. It becomes a little bit more kind of, right, okay, Christ, we've got to do it. This is actually happening, sort of thing. So slowly but surely our societies are going to become more supportive because we're presented with a common enemy. You know, we've no longer got the support of the government. You know, they've turned, they're hostile, and everybody knows. You know, if you're on, you don't even have to be on the same pages to know that they're hostile. So you're going to rely on your neighbours, you're going to rely on your family, you're going to rely on your friends, and the community thing is massive. The energy of Atlantis was community. And I'm not talking about lovely little communities in the woods, although those will be existing and they already do. And I'm talking about communities where we are already, and cities, towns, and everything. The ones that are still going to be holding the same fabric, the same structure, are going to be working a lot more in harmony with each other than they were. It's the division days are over.
Yeah, so more unconditional living.
Very much.
Basically. Oh, that's great.
Very much.
Yeah, and of course, we're seeing now the education system completely crumbling.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, how were kids educated in Atlantis?
They were educated in a schooling system, but the education system was based on spiritual sciences rather than repetition. And I failed miserably at school. My school years were no fun at all, because that didn't resonate with me, being told what to learn and how to memorize it. That's not how my brain works. As soon as I'm given something to do that I want to do, I flourish. And that's how the Atlanteans work with their children. And they spent a lot of the time outside. The climate, or it was a very temperate place. So it was easy to kind of be outside all day, connecting with nature, teaching them how to grow stuff, how to cook, how to tend the land, how to be with each other. And a lot of time was a lot of learning from play. You know, it's
the stuff they don't teach kids the important stuff nowadays.
No, they don't. They teach them how to be little robots, basically.
Exactly.
I know if there's any teachers listening, they'll probably throw their hands up in horror. And I've had a few people come back to me saying, no, that's not how we do it. But that's the system. It doesn't matter how the individual teacher represents the children. That's what the system wants them to be. So that's what it's been like. That's what the overall, like this autocratic energy that you get when you walk in the school gates is. It sets that theme. You know, you're there to conform. You're there to remember what you're told, and you're not given the opportunities to argue about it. That's gone. You know, that's as we knew it. has ceased to exist now. They're trying to keep it buoyant online at the moment, but judging by the way that my children are responding to it, I don't think it's going very well, to be perfectly honest with you.
No. Yeah, I remember when I was that age, I'd be filled with this intense dread upon going to school every day. And, I would flourish in, the arts and literature and stuff that actually speaks to the soul, Other things that were like, didn't resonate. It was like, what's the point?
Yeah. I was, I was at school in the 70s and the 80s, and they were quite, they were very 3D places then, but they're also, if you wanted to be a scoundrel and have fun, then it was very easy to do so. On one side of it, I quite enjoyed my school days. On the other, there was a lot of wasted time there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Flexibility. I think it taught me flexibility.
Great. And as we move into a more, for the sake of simplicity, a 5D society, how can kids, evolve and learn, in the same manner as they did in Atlantis, do you think?
It's a tough place to be a child at the moment. Okay, it's in the future things will be very different, but the boat will have had to have stopped rocking quite as badly as it is at the moment, because obviously everything that they knew, if they were old enough to know, has changed. All their social groups have changed. Even if they didn't enjoy school, even if it was, like you say, it gave you the horrors turning up to the gates every day, the fact that structure has gone is disruptive enough on its own. So it's now, the ball is being put back in the court of the parents again, where it has been out of the parents' court for a very, very long time, since the school started being what they are. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you hand your children over to a bunch of strangers, and that's how society has been. And it was similar in Atlantean times. The teachers were not necessarily family. There were people that came in outside from specialities, like you train for a certain art in teaching, wouldn't you? And that's what you teach the children. So that's what they would experience, but it just didn't have that formal structure that it has now. It was very, very different.
Yes, and I assume they had so much more time in nature as well.
Yeah. They did not have the pressures that society have placed upon human beings particularly in the last century. And of course, there was no conflict, there was no wars to speak of either. There was a war at the end when Atlantis fell for the fifth and the final time, but it was over pretty quickly from what I can gather.
Yes. Communication in Atlantis, were people telepathic?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, it's funny because we've got this very kind of almost like rosy 3D vision of what telepathy is, where you're kind of sat there like beaming your like what you want to dinner to the missus kind of thing, that's how you see it kind of written into like comics in the 1950s, or like the Meekan standing there like controlling you with his massive super brain or whatever. But telepathy or kind of like psychic communication is something that we're getting very good at already. Like you can already tell when someone's going to text you on the phone, or whether it starts off with learning about energy discernment, like you're picking up the different frequencies of the vibrations that are around you. That's a form of telepathic communication, because already somebody's energy is speaking to you. What the Atlanteans did when they were working at a very high frequency, and they weren't just doing it as a pastime, they were spending all day doing it, kind of thing, all day, every day, like you train for a martial art or something. If it was your job to get your third eye to the point where you could telepathically convey instructions to somebody, they would spend all day, every day doing it until they got it. And the people that were receiving it would also be trained to that level. It became pretty advanced towards the end. It was what we would almost regard as superpowers almost. But on a subtler level, you know, you see things, comic books or films are made and they're like an exaggeration of what the reality actually was.
Right, yes. So it was a bit more subtle then. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, I'd probably say 99% of us out there are a country mile more psychic than we'd ever take ourselves for. We just don't know how to look for what psychic really is or how that information is being presented to us. A lot of it's intuition.
Yes.
Clairsentience, you know, what you're picking.
Clairsentience, yeah.
Whether the alarm bells are ringing, whether they're feeling good. Heart-to-heart communication's another one that was massive in Atlantis. The information that resonates with your heart, you know.
Yeah.
So when they were speaking physically, it was a heart-based resonation, and that's how they could tell what was right for them as well. They were far more in tune with themselves and others around us, and I'm already seeing so much evidence of people in our field that are already there. We've already cracked it. We're already done. We've just got a very difficult environment to roll these abilities out in at the moment. They're not, society isn't designed for what we are at the moment. We're way ahead of our game energetically. It's all is change.
Because, in certain films you get like clues as to what Atlantean people were like the elves in Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
And, potentially the Jedi in Star Wars as well to some extent.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, they didn't take any crap. I know that.
Yeah.
It's in order to maintain a structure of that integrity on a 3D world, you had to have people that were capable of handling themselves. You couldn't just hand it over to a bunch of it wasn't all flower power and airy fairy. There always has to be that boundary where, you know, the light would be defended, and we're seeing that very much. That warrior aspect is rising in a lot of us at the moment. It's you act from the heart, and but sometimes you have to put your foot down, don't you? It's
it's difficult for some empaths who like grew up without any boundary structures.
A lot of them did. A lot of them weren't trained. In fact, a lot of them were denied.
Yes.
And spent years shutting the power, the abilities away, because they were told that they were nonsense, that they were wrong. You know, it all depends on when they agreed to activate these qualities on a soul level a bit later on in their lives, and it's all down to when your mission really kicks off, when it really begins, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And in terms of, technology and healing modalities, was it mainly crystals?
It was crystal-based.
Crystal-based.
Light and sound played a huge part in it. So if you combine crystals with nature, herbs, oils, sound vibrations were the key to it all, basically, and light technology as well. If you project a sonic vibration or light through a crystal, it becomes more powerful. So the crystals are kind of like the catalyst, or the in-between part. So there would be a crystal in just about anything. If you think about it now, I mean, we're communicating on computers which have got a silicon chip in them. You know, if you're looking further down the road, when that technology has evolved far further than it is at the moment, then you're going to be looking at crystal technology, and the light will come from that, the heat will come from that, what we regard as electricity or power will be passed through that kind of system. And it's again, the blueprints exist because we had them in Atlantis. We've just got to recover them again when the time is right to employ them.
And would you recommend any sort of particularly high vibrational crystals that will...
I tend to favor quartz.
Okay.
Quartz is kind of like my daily weapon of choice kind of thing. because it's so versatile. I mean, that will be anything, and it will do anything that I want it to do. It's if I want that to have the qualities of an amethyst, then it will take on the qualities of the amethyst. If I want it to anchor into a ninth dimensional frequency, that's what it will do. The beauty part, I've got a physical crystal in my hand, but that crystal will oscillate and also exist in different time frames and different vibrations simultaneously. That's what makes them so amazing. That's why everybody loves crystals, you know what I mean? Like, we're all drawn to them. It's like walking into a cake shop and trying to find somebody that doesn't like cake. You're not going to find them anywhere. We're drawn to them for a reason, and the majority of us use them because they give us the ability to extend further than we normally would do with a physical body. They're that bridge between the dimensions. Because we're physical, we are limited, or we have been limited. We're becoming less limited, but I think it's Serapis Bey or Saint Germain that explained to me a little while. He said, without crystals, we'd be 20 years behind on this ascension pathway, 10 or 20 years. He said, like, we'd be nowhere near where we are on the spiritual playing field, because we'll have had to be working so much harder just to do what we're doing. But we've all grabbed the crystals, and whether we're consciously aware of how to use them or not, they have expanded and have sped that process up in line with what we're supposed to be doing. We love them for a reason.
So they're like amplifiers as well.
Absolutely.
Whatever intent you might have, it kind of amplifies it.
Yeah. I mean, like they even from, if you carry one on you and you've programmed it to keep your vibration at a certain pitch, that's what the crystal will do. It will be harmonized with your fields. And while you are humanly fluctuating, and where you are subject to the ebbs and flows and to the kind of like the interaction with other people's energy, the crystal doesn't care. It just stays at that frequency because that's what it's been programmed to do. So that's I have one pretty much everywhere where I go. A lot of people, houses are kind of like got crystals in every room, that kind of thing. They hold the structure and the integrity of the energy. I mean, like, if you communicate with a crystal the same way as you communicate with a person, you instruct it to do things and it does it. And they hold that vibration, and they keep that vibration until you tell them not to keep the vibration. So therefore they operate like computers in a lot of ways. They're programmable. They receive information, they store information, they convey information. It's how to listen to it and how to pick it up that's usually the tricky bit, because we're looking for words and diagrams, and we might not necessarily get it like that. It comes in as intuition.
Yes. And these current energies that are streaming in are very like crystalline. Crystalline.
They are.
How does one who's like aware of the ascension integrate these energies, as opposed to someone who's more kind of like 3D? Does it affect them at all, or? It's
affecting them very heavily at the moment. If you're seeing, this is why conscious and unconscious has become so visible now. It's become a thing, and so if you think about 10 years ago, whether you go out, there was no visible difference usually between people. Everybody was of the same kind of consciousness level to a degree, obviously with fluctuations here or there, but you had to go to special places. Now you can see visibly when you're walking about what the conscious, and it's almost like you've got the markers in society, and it's dare I say it, it's a lot of it is highlighted by the level of compliance with things that are being kind of rolled out. Has this person accepted or began to think on a higher level yet, or is it still are we still talking about a consciousness that's just being fed by whatever the TV's saying? And so things have become visible for us. It's we can see the difference in.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Like the polarity is just literally night and day.
Yeah, it's
chalk and cheese.
Yeah, chalk and cheese. Mars and Venus, and it's being done because the light has got so bright now that the intensity of it, there is no hiding anymore. There are, you know, the shadows are gone. It's like you're either standing in the light, or you're standing in the light and struggling with it. And the kind of the very bewildering kind of behavior that we're seeing is exactly what you get when you take a human being that's not ready to wake up and you fry them on a high heat. It's and it's happening globally. It's happening globally, but I sincerely believe that the level of kind of mass hypnosis and varying aspects of behavior they're all indicators of where the light's hitting the hardest and having the right effect, or whether a particular society or a country has got a collective consciousness that's a lot denser and needs a lot more waking up, which is where things become difficult, where things become intense and pressurized and especially locked down, and the patterns of behavior are very kind of get very raised and very visible. It's all a bit of a litmus test, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So as long as you have the awareness of what's going on, it has less of a charge, or
it's
take it less.
We are integrating this regardless of what our levels of consciousness are. What it's doing, you're either in tune with it, or you're receiving it and it's creating disharmony and pushing. So the people that are being pushed are the ones that are acting more out of alignment. And this is just going to increase. And it's like boiling water. You put it in the microwave, you turn it up. Eventually the water molecules boil. They start to move so fast that they boil. That's what they do. That's what's happening to the people around us. And the behavior becomes more erratic. It becomes more unpredictable and angry. There's so much anger coming out, there's so much fear coming out, because it has to be released in order to traverse this gateway that we're moving through. And it will continue. The light will rise, the pressure will become greater, and more people will wake up. It's just how the process works, really.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So and did you want to elaborate a bit upon your own work, what you're doing now, and your meditations?
Yeah, I mean, I started this journey like proper in 2008. I've always kind of been on my spiritual pathway since about 91 or 92, really, but not really kind of into it in any way, apart from reading books and learning about it, doing a bit of transcendental meditation, getting a Reiki masters like a lot of us did sort of thing back in the good old days. And that's just kind of the learning, that's the learning process, developing an interest in crystals and stuff like that. But it was about 2008 that Diana Cooper and a small collection of psychics gave me the information that this is what I was going to be doing. I was going to be helping people move through the ascension pathway. And that's when I started learning about Atlantis and started creating meditations for people to use in 2013. And in 2014, I wrote the first book, The Archangel Guide to Ascension with Diana Cooper. And what we did is, it wasn't anything necessarily incredibly new, that book, but what I'd identified is the fact that all of the books that had been written before the cosmic moment in 2012 had a different structure or a different frequency, and that we were moving up and using almost different energy templates for the spiritual information that we're working with. So we wrote an ascension manual for people in where we are at the moment. And it's the majority of stuff that I bring through are tools and activations, things to help people raise their vibration on a daily basis. And it's kind of, it's always involved an Atlantean element. A lot of everything that I bring through was used in Atlantean times, the kind of the crystal blueprints, the chakra work, the working with the 4 body systems, visit the temples of Atlantis a lot in my meditations and workshops, and just, it's almost like getting people used to what we're going into. Do you see what I mean with that? This is the energy that we're using. The I suppose the ultimate focus of everything I do is to get people in harmony with the highest aspect of themselves available, because the energies that are coming in isn't taking any prisoners. It's not going, oh, that person's not quite ready for it yet. It's like it's moving hard and it's moving fast, and it hits you like a bus. If you're not ready for it, it hits you like a bus. That dose that we got over the winter solstice and into the beginning of January was very difficult. It was tough stuff to integrate. The light jumped from one singular source into almost like it's coming in from 7 different universe cosmic points now. So we instead of just going up 1 gear, we went up 7 gears overnight, kind of thing. Plus you get all of the Christ light that traditionally comes in over the winter solstice. And it was flattening people. It's just all of a sudden you got like, right, okay, I'm going off grid for a bit. I need to lie down and integrate this. And if you fight the flow, it knocks you out, basically. And we've integrated that. So my job is to try and keep people as absolutely in tune with the best way to navigate that as humanly possible, because it's actually happening now. It's not something we just talk about in workshops anymore. This is a real thing that we're undergoing. It's
So what would you recommend for people as like a sort of regular kind of protocol? Because you have your page group on Facebook called Practical Ascension.
Tim Wild Practical Ascension. It's I thought I'd break it down into something a little bit more grounded, because you can spend all year with your head in your clouds, like evading reality, and it's lovely up there, kind of thing. But at the end of the day, we're boots on the ground at the moment. You've got to be grounded. You've got to be a person. You've got to be real. You've got to walk your talk. And at the end of the day, you've got to be able to integrate these energies and still work on what's going on around you. So my first port of call is the chakras, working with the 12 chakras. We've all got 12 chakras now. Most people still think we've got 7, but we've got this column of very high frequency chakras that are causing all sorts of mayhem, basically, because once they've integrated, all the lessons start. That's why from 2013, 2014, all of us on the ascension pathway got pushed really hard. Our relationships changed. We were forced to speak our truth. We're tests of the heart, tests of the energy. All of these different chakras are calling in these very high frequency lessons for us. So the best thing to do is work with them. Learn what you got and find out how they affect your reality and what to do with them if they're slightly out of kilter. It's anything that's below the chin downwards is usually causing trouble. So it's everybody loves the higher chakras from the stellar gateway down to the crown, but anything below that or below the chin usually is where the lessons are projected into our reality.
Yes. So do people tend to bypass the lower chakras?
I did it for years. I was like, I don't want to work with that. That's like, it's sticky and horrible. Keep it away from me. But the one that tends to trip people up the most is the sacral, because sacral pertains to your personal relationships with other people, partners, family, friends, bosses, everything like that. That's all the blueprint of that is maintained within the sacral. In order to move into this higher frequency and to re-establish higher frequency relationships, we've actually had to drop, or many of us have had to drop, the relationships and the interactions that we had previously. So what you've got is like 8 years of people with marriages falling apart, losing jobs, losing friends. And some of us, what I've seen on a regular basis is people being kind of left high and dry for a while the energy reintegrates, and then the soul family comes in, and that's when the sacral, the sacral's done its job then, and they've worked through their lessons. But they're so tough and so disruptive that people don't want to face them. It's and understandably so, because once your support network that you had previously, real physical people, starts to change, that's when the boat is really rocked. It becomes quite scary.
Yes. That's associated with the color orange, is it not?
It used to be orange. Now it's now rose pink, which kind of it kind of indicates transcendent love. Okay, it's what it does is it removes the 3D aspects. When it changes over like this, it just kicks all the 3D relationships into touch. Basically, if it's 3D, then it doesn't survive. If it can manifest and survive at a higher frequency, then it will do. But if that's not the case, then other people will come in and that matches that new vibration of it. It's like I said, the process has been quite brutal. It hasn't really kind of left anything, left any stone unturned. It's really revised who we interact with on a daily basis.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially family. I've seen a lot of kind of family aggro, particularly at the moment with the division. You know, because I get so many people who come to the page that are living in divided houses where there's like a selection of consciousness to choose from. And if you're trying to maintain your light as high as possible, it's a challenge on a daily basis.
Yes, it's a bit like mixing dimensions, especially if you're living with someone who's kind of still a bit 3D and hasn't really ascended into that sort of unconditional 5D vibe. It can feel very confusing and even distressing.
Very claustrophobic for people. People feel very trapped by their circumstances. It's a case of trying to balance it out. I mean, if you can maintain your light under those conditions, you can maintain your light anywhere, basically. Everything's training at the end of the day.
Ideal training ground. Yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, Tim, thank you for everything. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I've really enjoyed talking to you. I love the fact that you've brought this into play tonight, because I think it's a lot. I'm usually a little bit tentative about adding Atlantis into a spiritual conversation, unless I'm invited to do so, because it's so out there, so tip of the pyramid. But at the end of the day, it's what we're moving into.
Absolutely, it is essential. It is integral.
I mean, it's just very quickly, if I explain what's happening at the moment, last January, or New Year's Eve, that was changing into January 2020, I was sat meditating in my bedroom, and Archangel Metatron dropped in, and they were like, how they are about it. They're quite casual. Oh yeah, this 2020 is going to be a really interesting year. It's like, it's going to change. Everything's going to change. So it's going to be fun, sort of thing. I'm like, I know that. I know that tone. And then they changed it and said, right, February onwards, everything's going to start shifting. But the thing is, like, I've been told that, and others have been told that so many times, it's a bit like a well-worn line. So, more change kind of thing. But when are we actually going to start seeing this change that we're working so hard for? February, off we go. And it was because a chakra activated called the navel chakra. And the navel chakra is contained within the physical body. It's the one physical chakra that's added to the column between the solar plexus and the sacral. That's bright orange now, and it's been there for years, but it's only just become active. That is currently the most powerful chakra blueprint that's active on this planet at the moment. It's the chakra of community. It's the chakra that is employing globally the Atlantean ascension blueprint, which is creating the change. And the 2nd February, it turned to February last year, we started the lockdown process and the change began. And it was the date that Archangel Metatron said the changes would start and the chakra blueprint would become active. So we're right in the middle of this at the moment. Sorry?
What date was that in February?
That was pretty much the 1st of February last year.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, I certainly felt something around February, and my whole world just changed. Sort of a huge 5D kind of shift. 3 to 5D without like going over 4D. It was just
no. Sometimes you just step over the gap. All sat down now. I think I'll avoid that. It's messy.
Right. So that was
big. It's such a huge shift, and that's going on at the moment. that will continue to terraform our reality until it matches the Atlantean Ascension blueprint. That's what we're moving into. Sounds kind of a little bit kind of, you know, it is quite a hardcore process because you can see the effect that it's having out there. It's just completely removing or altering the substance of how we live as societies globally.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you've got to have the key players in place to do all the nefarious kind of like I said, the baddies are the actors at the end of the day. They've just forgotten that they're actors and they don't want to hand their keys back at the moment. It's all playing out as part of a blueprint. It's all part of a massive show that we're all participating in.
And you mentioned that it would take until 2032 approximately, or
that is ultimately, yeah, it's a ballpark one. It's ultimately we are supposed to be. This is Diana Cooper wrote about this in her book 2012 and Beyond, and so we are right in the middle of this 18-20 year transitional window at the moment. When she wrote the book and when the predictions were coming through, psychically orientated people who are receiving spiritual information, 2032 is the official date. By 2032, we will have established a very 5D collective consciousness in the world that we are living in. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to look like 5D utopia at this point. It's just going to be a collection of unified consciousness and minds who are all thinking from the heart rather than from the ego. So it's being pushed in that direction very much. But I personally think and feel with the progress that I'm seeing out there, we're going to do that before 2032. I think we're going to be hitting what we need to be hitting on a vibrational level much sooner than that. I don't think we're going to have to wait as long. I think we're roasting through this process at a rate of knots that I didn't even think that we'd be doing it at the moment.
Yes, it's quite astounding how accelerated this shift has been. Yeah, I wasn't expecting something so
I wasn't
swift, really.
No, I know. You know, like this is what I've been saying. It's like we wanted change. We've been waiting for change. I've been feeling frustrated for 2 years. You know, 2018 and 2019, I was getting seriously itchy feet. I was like, come on.
Same.
We put all of this work in. How much more are we going to have to kind of like, how much more are we going to have to watch before the shifts take place? And then they arrive and that's it. So it's just going to evolve around us. But I feel it's very important for us to be focusing on the higher vibration side of it, because it's when it drags you in, it's specifically designed to do so, and it's designed to hold you in a lower frequency. You don't want to be there. We don't want to be vibrating in that frequency. We don't want fear. We don't want disharmony or illusion. We focus on what we want to create, because we had our powers of manifestation kind of like bred out of us quite a while ago. They're still there. We just need to relearn to use them again and focus on things that we need to focus on. It's a highly tuned process.
And on the practical human level, would that also involve basic things like dietary changes as well?
If you're guided to do so, yeah.
Right.
I tell people, like, you know, there's no ifs or buts. There's a lot of pressure on spiritual people to be living like little angels out there. But if you want to go to the pub and have 4 pints and then kind of do it, you know what I mean? If your body's guiding you to not give up dairy, then don't do it. If it's guiding you to give up dairy, do it. Go with whatever your body is telling you to do. There's no kind of right or wrong, because your bodies are changing. Everybody's bodies are changing at the moment. They've got different demands.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to be as within, so without, you know, in touch with ourselves first and foremost. If we're putting unnecessary demands on our bodies, then our bodies are going to reject. They're going to create and kick up and just make things more difficult, basically.
Yeah.
It's about just being in tune, being in flow. Whatever you feel will raise your vibration, use it. It's The work that I do with the chakras is on my website, www.timwild.com. If you just go there and punch in 5D chakras into the search bar, lots of information on it, and my meditation for working with them's on YouTube. So it's all on there. That's the one that I would recommend to use. That's the one I used as my bread and butter for years and years and years, and I still do now. If I've got something if I'm not feeling aligned like I want to be aligned, that's where I go to, because it gets me straight back into the field that I want to be in.
That's wonderful. Great. Well, yeah, we've done about an hour. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I've kind of covered everything that you've asked me to cover. It's it's been a pleasure. If you've got anything else that you want to ask me, feel free.
Yeah. No, I know. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming aboard, and I'm sure everyone who's watching who's ascension curious or on the process.
Ascension curious. Definitely. We went straight in at the deep end. That's the best way to do it. If you're going to do it, you might as well get dropped in the deep end without your armbands, really, and start learning about Atlantis. Yeah. That's the best thing to do. Yeah, definitely.
But I'm sure most people are already on the way as well. So I hope that's been edifying and valuable.
Yeah, it really has. Very much enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for some very, very interesting questions and the opportunity to actually expand about what I see going on around us at the moment. It's important stuff. It's important stuff what we're going through, and to create properly for ourselves at the moment.
Absolutely. And one more thing in terms of crystals. Would you recommend more people learn about them and how to use them?
Yeah. There's a lot of basically, if someone picks up a crystal, any crystal, whatever crystal they're drawn to, most of the time they will just do naturally what they are inclined to do with that crystal. It's when you start thinking that you've got to do certain things with that crystal that it starts becoming complicated. So flow and intention and harmonization with that crystal are most important. You don't really necessarily need a list of instructions on how to work a crystal. The crystal works in a resonant harmony with you. Of course, program them, you clean them. I've got another video on my website how to work with crystals and carvings, which is on my that's on there as well. And I've done quite a few workshops and working with crystals as well. But I'm like, if you want to know how to work with a crystal effectively, watch how a child works with a crystal. They are at one with that. It becomes part of you. If you think you don't know what to do with the crystal, then it becomes a mismatch of energy. But you just a lot of the time it's finding out how you work with that crystal and how it vibrates with your frequency, and a lot of the time they do talk to you, but on a very subtle level. It usually comes in as information or inspiration. I usually find that the crystals will be like, I wouldn't have normally thought of that. And it's like, I know where that came from. That came from my crystal skull. Something. It's just a very natural process working with them, I think.
Yes. Interestingly, looking at the etymological root of crystal, it's the same as Christ and Krishna and crystals. It's the same etymological root. And I'm wondering,
isn't it, now you mention
it? I'm wondering if that has to do with original source energy.
Christ consciousness.
Yeah. So would a crystal be a sort of another type of embodiment of that sort of ultimate,
It would do. I mean, certain crystals have got certain jobs. If you say, for the sake of example, everyone's heard of the word Lemurian crystal. Yeah. Lemurian crystals are so highly advanced on a vibrational level. They've got their own mission. That crystal will go where it wants to go. It's not going to kind of just basically wind up, doing some random job thing, you know, like spending 10 years on someone's shelf gathering dust. If it's there, it's meant to be there, kind of thing. But most of the times they fall into the hands of people that are deliberately seeking them. And so therefore that Lemurian crystal will have a set of codings, it will have a set of instructions and a mission that will be conveyed through the person that is connected to it. That's very much how crystals work. They are archives of information that are tuned into almost like an iCloud of energy that if you see what I mean. There's all these different fields of crystal storage. The Atlanteans put their so they worked with crystal skulls in the temples, and there's what was called a skull conclave, which is a collective of skull energy or consciousness of thoughts. That still exists. It hasn't gone anywhere because Atlantis sank. The skull conclave or collective consciousness of Atlantean crystal skulls still exists. All you need is to tune into it, and it begins to filter through on a way or a level that you can understand to, and tune into it. That's how we're receiving this information back again.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes. And in terms of technology, how could we sort of move away from the sort of Wi-Fi and
it's a funny one.
Do we need to? Or
I don't think we need to.
No.
I've never had any red flags from what's going on at the moment at the level. I think that when we reach a certain pitch and a certain vibration, these things don't affect us. It's you know, if you're feeling vulnerable, if you're feeling under attack by your environment, that in itself will be enough to trigger the kind of, so it's almost like the enemy patterning within the body. I've never had any red flags from, I mean, we're all on computers now. We're all linked into the great internet of things. And I don't think it's going anywhere at the moment.
Okay.
That's
awesome.
That's generally, I think.
Yeah, I think that will wrap it up, really. So thank you so much. I'll put all your links down below in the description box.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
And let's chat for 2 or 3 minutes after this recording, and then.
Okay, mate. Lovely.
All right. Thanks, everyone. As ever, be free. Have fun.
Thank you, Jesse.
May the force be with you all.
Indeed.
Until next time. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, mate. Bye-bye.